Hello, this is Conrad. Welcome to the platform. This is Conrad and Tom. We are getting ready to record number 10. So the last conversation that we had, we decided to talk about the beginning steps to programming the subconscious mind, or reprogramming, really. If you didn't listen to it, listen to it. And we're going to pick off. We're gonna fade into the next few steps because there wasn't really a definitive 1, 2, 3, 4 steps. I don't think there was just we kind of just bullet pointed it. I did make a couple mistakes though, Tom. It's not Tim McGraw, the singer. It's David McGraw. Yeah. So if you're looking for those power affirmations, I'm sure you found them.
Yeah, because I put in Tim McGraw.
Tim McGraw, and they came up, right? So it's David McGraw, 500 power affirmations. That was one of them. I did mess up on something else too, and I don't know what it was.
Check episode 13 out. we'll circle back to it.
But all right, so I got a bunch of notes for this talk.
How have you been feeling, man, since your parents left?
Oh man, I feel fantastic. And yeah, I feel fantastic, man. And I think the important thing was being able to understand why.
Yeah.
And look, I'm telling you, it's great to eventually get away. When parents come visit, it's great, but it's great to get away because, man, you go back to certain patterns, especially parents, because parents, they're always going to be your parents. And they know that, and so they act like that. And so they always treat you like their child, and it's like mom and dad still act the same towards each other. It's like, oh man. But the beautiful part is that we can eventually get away from that. And I've done that multiple times. But
something, if you don't have a clear path to go right now.
Yeah, whatever.
So something you said last recording really has been vibing well with me, and it was about your month away from the radio and TV and the peace that you had, harmony, rhythm.
Yeah, that was real, man.
And we're talking about subconscious and the conscious mind, and one of the biggest things that we're talking about, you and I, at least off the record, a lot, is discovering the things that we don't want to believe, that we don't even know we believe, because they're sabotaging our future plans.
Don't want to believe that we say that again.
So we don't know what we believe subconsciously that is sabotaging us. Mm-hmm. I mean, you have to there are ways to figure that out. Look at your actions. If you sleep all day and you're lazy, your subconscious is lying to you some way. If you have low self-esteem, your subconscious, you know what I'm saying? Like, there are ways to figure out, because how you act and whatnot is a result of that. But there are also these little fine, small little lies that we tell ourselves all the time on a regular basis that aren't easy to pick up on. And for example, it hit me real hard, and I'm trying to figure out how to balance this because I love music. I love music, man. It's an expression of who we are. It's an expression of how we feel, and we can relate and whatever. Some of us, I do at least. And I was listening to a song the other day, and it was just a real good song, and it was catchy, and I could relate to it because it was about a situation that I actually had gone through. And I think the chorus went something like, time heals all things. And that's such a popular saying or belief or thought that, when somebody's going through something, people are quick to be like, well, time heals all things. Like, just give some time. And I thought about that, and I am speaking from complete ignorance on this, but I don't think time heals anything. Like time.
Dude, I'm so glad you said that. Because, yeah.
Because time is, first of all, we created time as a tool to measure linear length of a day, and we created day. But I get it. I get what they mean, because in a longer amount of time, it is easier to forget those emotions or get over them or heal or whatever. But time itself is not a healer.
No,
And so to finish the thought, I became conscious of that at that moment, and I was like, you know what, time isn't a healer of all things. And the reason I came to that and it stood out to me is because when I was out in California and I was engaged and my fiance had cheated on me, and I was like at an all-time low, man, real desperate, like just, man, it was really a bad situation. It was during Christmas, so everybody was gone. You know, I had nobody out in California. And I remember calling Ron and being like, dude, you know, I'm just broken and whatever. And I was like, but time heals everything. And he said this. He was like, Tom, time doesn't heal everything. Jesus heals everything. And
Yep.
and I was like, okay, well, I want some of that. And I prayed to accept Christ in my life, and nothing happened. I mean, I'm dead serious, man. I changed for like a week maybe.
Right.
And then went back to my old ways.
Yeah.
But that's just, man. So anyway, speak to that, man. Like,
Well,
hold on. I'm sorry. I'm sorry to cut you off. So that was just an example of my point. My point was, how many other things am I listening to that are enjoying, that are filling my brain with lies?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Ooh, that's a good one, dude. That's a good one, man.
So that's what I'm at, because you said you were secluded from all that stuff.
Yeah.
And I just listened to a YouTube channel or YouTube video today that said the same thing. Like, stop listening. Like, make sure you know what you're listening to, and that we can get these lies fed into us from all around.
Well, so Tom mentioned Ron. Ron's a really good friend of ours. We've known for a long time, and he's what has he got, like 15 years on us? But he's a mighty man of God, and he told me the same thing too many times. And time does not heal all wounds. It's God that heals all wounds, and we can get deeper into that, but that is a truth, man. How many people do you know that have been battling something for years? What about grudges? People are very, very good at holding grudges for 20, 30, 40 years. I remember there was this one movie where, I forget the name of it. I don't know the name of it all, but it was about this guy who I didn't talk to his brother for, I don't know, 40, 50 years, a long time, maybe 30 years. And he finally came to the realization that he has to go speak to his brother, be the first one to do it. And he didn't have the money. He didn't drive, so he took his tractor and he drove like 1,400 miles or 800 miles, whatever it was, and he found his brother somewhere
Is
in
that
the
a true story?
It is a true story, yeah. I believe, or based on true events.
Yeah, I heard about that movie.
Yeah, and so anyway, look, 30 years. You can say, oh, well, it took 30 years. Well, no, it wasn't time itself, because you could then say, well, let me just wait 30 years, and no matter what, it'll be fine. No, it's not. It took him 30 years to come to a certain realization.
Plus, you can die and
within
go
that
your
time.
whole life.
Yeah, exactly.
And not heal.
Right, exactly. So it's not time, but so yeah, it's a great point. But man, talking about the subconscious programming, and then talking about either, I don't know, midpoint or towards the end of this recording, we're going to eventually talk about the 7 or the 14 or 13.
Probably 7.
Yeah, we got to look at them really, because the Hermetic principles, the principles that govern
the universe.
The universe. or I would say that the immutable laws that make the universe, at least as far as we.
Nothing can happen or function outside of these without.
Yeah. And then you have God, which obviously is above all the laws, but so we're talking about subconscious programming last point, and how in one of the principles is the law of vibration. And look, man, you can look at this world many different ways, and one of the ways you can look at it is through vibration and how things vibrate on certain frequencies. And feelings actually have a vibrational range: sadness, happiness, and all that. And so here's the thing: what you receive more of what you vibrate at. That's the law of attraction. So you have the law of vibration, the principle of vibration, the principle of attraction. The law of attraction, I guess, is what it's more commonly referred to as. So if I'm vibrating at a certain state, then I will attract that same vibration to me. So here's the thing: listening to you mentioned music.
Yeah.
Now, the thing is, when we're in a sad state, like depressed and sad, and listen to sad, depressing music, we say, hey, this makes me feel good because something else that is apart from me is resonating on my same frequency. So you feel that connection, but it's not a good connection. Because, think about it, if you're a drug addict and we're social creatures, so we want to hang out with other drug addicts because it makes us feel good. We're now part of a social group. But guess what? You're just hanging out with more problems. It's like the saying, a wrong and a wrong don't make a right.
Yeah, well, let me add to that real quick. Just something I picked up on, which was profound, is that you will tend to stick with your identity, what you identify with, and even if it's bad, even if it's negative, because you know it. I'm sorry. Identity is part of it, but familiarity, that is the word.
Yes.
Familiarity. So like, so the context was people getting better subconsciously, mentally, and mastering what we're talking about, and then going right back into the old environment that they lived in, and eventually going back and reverting to what they used to be because it's more familiar to them.
And then on a neurological level, you're just falling back into the same ruts that we were talking about on the last podcast or the one previous to that. So that's why change is so hard, because we love what's familiar to us. We love security. It feels so good to take the same path. It's like, you hear people say, hey, where do you want to go this summer for vacation? Oh, let's go to that same place we always go to. Hey, what do you want to eat for dinner this Friday? Hey, let's go to that same restaurant, and not only that, but I'm going to get the same exact thing that I get all the time because
Which I do, and I love.
Because it's familiar. Look, I mean, there are certain things where it's like, hey, we do it because, I mean, there's obviously a very positive side to that. If we got to be happy that your physician goes to work every day doing the same thing and getting better at his practice or her practice, because when you go see a physician, you want somebody who is competent, just like with anything else. But when it comes to changing yourself and changing your subconscious program, your program that you operate on, then you have to go against the grain, and it's very hard, and it may be lonely, and you may have to do a lot of stretching of your mind, because we're talking on a neurological level. This isn't just fake stuff. This is physically changing your brain when you start to do new things. You're making new neural connections, and disattaching old strong ones. Just like what Joe Dispenza always says, neurons that fire together wire together. That's the same thing. When you learn a new habit, or when you repeat an old habit, you're just hardening those neural connections. And you can actually go online and physically see how this, or you can see how this physically takes place in the brain. This isn't just some idea or theory. It's fact, and it makes sense because all you have to do is just think back to a time when you learned something new and then kept repeating it over and over again. It gets easier each time.
So,
And I was just gonna say, with anything you do repetitively, it gets easier with time. So think about it. Same thing with thoughts. You can have the same repetitive thoughts like, "Hey, I'm no good. I'm stupid. I will never achieve more than what I am now." Or you could be that doctor who makes, or you're that businessman who makes $1 million a year, but you're only making $1 million every year for the next 30 years. Like, you can't increase because you're used to the same modes of thinking. So, what did you want to say?
To piggyback off that and to tie into what we've been talking about, so the hardest part, this is Joe Dispenza, the hardest part about change is not making the same choices you did the day before. And right after that, he mentioned the familiarity. He said we cling to the familiar, not liking the unknown. And in this interview, the context was talking about addiction, and
like any kind of addiction.
Yeah, drug addiction.
Drug addiction
Yeah,
specifically.
yeah. And the part of the context was, dopamine's being released in your brain, chemicals being released, etc. And then also it was about the placebo effect. And another thing was this desire to crave more. Once you hit a certain level, you want to rise above that level and get more and more and more.
Yeah.
And then to counter that, he was talking about being at a state of mind, like meditation, where you can completely get outside of your identity, and become so whole that you are complete and don't want anything.
Yeah.
You don't want anything. And I mean, the studies that they're doing and the research and the experiments and the tests, the results are so profound, so supernatural is what they are. I mean, man, that's so Joe Dispenza is he clearly said that he's not looking for the natural. He's not looking for the normal. He's looking for the supernatural, for the super mind. And he brought up so many good points. And he was talking about how we're energy.
Yeah.
And they do these CAT scans and whatnot and measure people's energy and brain waves and frequencies and all that while they're in these meditations. And he said it's like 40 to 80,000 times. It's reading 40 to 80,000 times higher than what normal people are bouncing out.
Yeah.
And one of the greatest examples that we've all heard, and he shared, was the mom who lifts the school bus off the kid.
Yeah.
And it's amazing because like a month ago, in Psychology Today magazine, I read a story about I don't know, at the time, I think she was like a 13-year-old girl, and her dad was working on a pickup truck in the garage. And some of these facts may be skewed, but I think he was working on a pickup truck in the garage.
He was a 45-year-old bodybuilder.
Yeah. And there was a gas can or something like that, and the jack fell, tipped the gas can, it lit on fire, and the wheel was off, so the whole car was on him at some point, with the weight being majority on him because the three wheels
Yeah.
were tilted, and she ran in there and without hesitation picked the car up and somehow dragged him out from under it and then got him out of the garage. And you hear these stories, and this is the greatest point that Joe made, and it lined up. And it's so crazy, and this is why I told you I'm so scattered right now, because it's all coming together. Because right now I want to talk about the law of attraction because of what I just said, because it's so crazy that Joe said that, because I just had read a couple articles today that were talking about how miracles are happening every day all around the world, and that they're common occurrences just in so many different places that we don't recognize them, or we don't identify them as miracles, or we don't believe them, and so then we don't see them. And it's so funny because the law of attraction and vibration and polarity and all that, like, man, we're knocking on these doors right now and they're being opened.
Yeah.
It's crazy how, like, somehow all this information is intertwined together, even though I'm researching different topics with different people on different subjects, and all the stories are corresponding. And he just talks about how like the ability to manifest that without the fight or flight kicking in.
Yeah.
Like, how does a 13-year-old girl lift something that heavy? I mean,
Well,
how is that possible?
Yeah.
I'm telling you, man, the more and more I press into this, the more, I mean, I believe all that stuff. I believe it all. And I also not only believe, but I just know this for a fact that we're numb as a global population. I mean, look, I don't go into secret societies. I don't know what else is going on. Who knows? Maybe right now, 3 miles buried under the earth, there's some kind of cave where they're having some ceremonies or they're doing amazing things. I mean, who knows? And it's like you don't get exposed to it until you start looking for it, because these people, I know that I'm talking about just earthly people, just human beings, like, they're not broadcasting this stuff. You don't see it on the news, like, hey, because why? Because it requires a level of belief, and you have to be attracted to it, because there's nothing worse than trying to persuade somebody to, like, for example, believe in God.
Yeah.
It's like, hey man, just sit down with me and look, just give me a second, like a salesman, like a car salesman.
Yeah.
It's like they learn tactics on, okay, what stimulates people to sign the paper, to make that sale. Like, what do you learn? And then they study this stuff. Well, you gotta do this, you gotta do that, you gotta do that, do that. And it's like, man, it's exhausting. You're trying to manipulate people's but that's what we do, man. And like for a quick example, I remember watching TV shows back in the day where it was a half-hour show, and then it's specifically designed so that there's an intro which lasts about, 7 minutes, and then they go to commercial. And then something little happens, and then commercial. And then each time the commercials get closer and closer together, but there's more dramatic events happening in the story, so you get hooked, and so you'll sit through 2 minutes of commercials to watch it, and it's all psychological.
Yeah.
And it works off of primitive emotions.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, we know how to control people because of their primitive brain. We're focusing on the primitive brain. Like, for example, hey man, you want to sell something? Look at the Instagram people. Girls, a lot of girls and guys, they'll just be naked on their Instagram accounts because it's like, hey man, that is a primal thing, and it gets your clicks and views. So the whole point of me saying that is, I honestly think that we are right now numbed to a very low baseline form of consciousness, and we're kept at that level because of the things that we are exposed to, like the news and like horrible. I mean, come on, man. It's so obvious. Why is everything news related so dramatic and so chaotic, when if you went and lived in the woods for a while, you would realize that, hey, life is actually very, very peaceful. It really is. But you have to be willing to expose yourself to that and receive it, because drama and chaos is addicting, because it does release addictive chemicals in your brain.
So listen to this. The book I'm reading, Thinking Fast and Slow, mentioned the same thing, and I don't know if it was in that book or it was also repeated in an article I was reading, but it said that I think it was the book, that our ability to notice and be aware of negativity is faster than positivity. We are actually able to notice it faster. And I think he made a claim based on a study and an experiment that it is very easy to find a sad person or a frowny face in a crowd at a party, but it is full of happy people.
Yeah.
But it is very hard to spot a happy person in a crowd of frowners.
Man,
you know,
so interesting.
and so what you just said, all the stuff that you just said about commercials and media and all that, it is without a doubt part of our nature that people are playing on. Because I just listened to Joe Dispenza's one of his interviews today, and he was talking about how man, it was so good. He said the context was how we can reprogram our subconscious mind via belief, and the emotion has to match the information.
Yeah.
And he's like, so what these commercials will do is they'll do these tactics to get your emotions to rise, and then they'll reveal like the product or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's all psychological, man.
Yeah.
But that just means that those people are aware of our human disposition.
Yes,
Yeah.
like
I'm not sure why we can notice a negative energy. I mean, we were just talking about this last podcast, I think, about how we were talking about last podcast about how we're so attracted to the negative, like drama, etc.
Yeah.
And it's like it's hardwired in us.
Yeah.
Well, not hardwired, it's programmed.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, look, we can take this to on a path that maybe I don't know what your thoughts are on this, but look, if you look at it from an evolutionary perspective, that we were once just single-celled organisms, and then we evolved into this and that, which I kind of have a mixed view on that. I think both ways still, in my belief, just still point to God, and we can talk about God later. I mean, that can be for a later recording, but look, let's just say we did come from a single-cell organism, evolution, and all that, and we did run around in the wilderness like little monkeys, and then we lived in the wild, where it was like, hey, there's a dinosaur gonna kill me, or over there's a lion's gonna kill me, and so I gotta be on constant guard. So when you're relaxed, you're in a subdued state. You're just or you're in a peaceful state. You're not on hyper alert, and you pay attention to some YouTube videos, and it's like footage of African plains or the jungle where a leopard's sleeping there, and all of a sudden not a leopard, what was that video I saw? Something was just sleeping there, and then all of a sudden something came to like eat it, and it just in a matter of seconds had to flip on its back and start clawing at this thing and fight it, and it had to bite its face off, and it got away like it was bleeding, but it finally made it. It's like, man, what a life is that? That you have to sleep, but with like you can only sleep like 10% of your brain is asleep because the other 90 has to still be on alert. And so imagine that. And so I mean, man, we still fear so much. We really do.
Living in survival 70% of the time.
See, look at that.
That's what we are.
See, that's the other day when my parents were here for those couple days. I'm sleeping on the couch. They're sleeping on my bed, and I wake up at like 2 a.m, and I wanted to make sure that my mom wasn't still up on her phone, because she'll be up on her phone watching these just garbage, and so I kind of went in there quick, because when I went in there, I was thinking, hey, my mom's gonna be up with the light on. I'm gonna tell her, like, dude, turn that off. I go to bed. It's already 2 a.m. Like a child. But so I kind of went in there fast. But they were both sleeping in the bed, and so I like kind of walked in there quick, and man, they both turned, and my mom kind of gasped, and my dad was like, had that reaction, like, who's there? Like that. Like they were genuinely afraid, and that's kind of scary, but it's like, we still have that in us.
Yeah.
We still have that thing that says, hey man, you got to be protective, because there's a creature lurking around the corner that's going to eat you.
Yeah.
Or even worse now, there's going to be a bad man around the corner who's going to stab you in the face and take your wallet. It's like, geez, like, we really live in that time still. Like, we're still so primitive that we have to worry about such stupid stuff. And look, to make matters even worse, you turn on the TV and it's like, hey, don't you know that somebody just ran into a church and blew up 50 people with a dynamite strapped to their chest?
Yeah.
Like, hey, that just happened. Hey, don't you know that somebody just walked into a school and M16 to a bunch of kids? It's like, man, but what's that doing? What positivity is there behind that? And then here's the funny thing. Hey, we now got to get rid of guns because that's the problem. It's like, that is not the problem. Look at Michael Moore's efforts. He's the guy who went out there and walked to, like, there's a documentary, I think it's Bowling for Columbine, where he gets a couple of those Columbine kids. One of them was shot, got a bullet in the spine, was paralyzed. So he took that kid and another victim, and they went to like Target headquarters. I don't know where it's at, Boston or Chicago, I don't know where. And they, you know how Michael Moore is, he went in there, he's like, hey, can we speak with the CEO or whatever? And they're like, no, obviously not, I turned them away. But then they came out like 15, 20 minutes later, maybe an hour later, I don't know. And the lady, like the spokeswoman or whoever it was, announced then and there in front of all the cameras that Target will no longer sell ammunition. Now, I don't know if that's still true, but look, we still have mass shootings.
Yeah.
We still have it. So guns are not the problem, because even if you do take away guns, they're gonna start making bombs. And who's they? Well, it's not they. It's what we're doing in this world, man. We're stirring things up, and then we just say, oh, well, what's to blame? Oh, well, guns are to blame. That's not true at all. Look, you create a hostile environment, and you will get hostility, man. The law of attraction. That's the law of attraction right there. I'll finish off with this, and I'll let you say whatever you want. I saw a video, and I love the videos where they show the homeless dog, or the dog that's like been abused and is now out in the streets, and it's like super famished, and its ribs, you can see every single bone in his body, and then the people who like are trying to rescue it will reach their hand out, and the thing will snap at it, and it's just like, man, this dog is in such a horrible state of mind that it trusts no one. It's sick. It's like it's probably thinking, if in dog thinking capacity, is just like, damn, I'll just die. But man, they hang on. That's what's so cool about animals. They don't think like that. They don't think sorrow. They just either are pissed, aggressive, but they don't have that objective perspective where they say, man, life really sucks. They just are. And so I love the videos, because then the person will take it, start petting it, start feeding it, and then it'll be like 6 months later, and the thing just looks beautiful. It's like a beautiful, healthy dog. It's running around, it's playing, because, man, it just all a dog does is just resonating with this environment. It's just resonating what you're giving it. And so that's why they call it man's best friend. It'll just vibrate on the frequency you feed it. That's why dogs are so cool. But think about what we're doing, and we have that too. That's built within us when we start to look at the world and we see the news and we see this and we see division everywhere and we're being divided, splintered, like our minds are being divided, and it creates that vibration, that frequency, and it resonates, man. It's resonating over the globe, and you know how energy travels super fast. So vibration, energy, is affecting people, and then we're all like afraid, but that's a control mechanism. And look, I don't like conspiracies are fun. Conspiracies are fun to think about, but look, some conspiracies are real. But here's the thing, man. I'm not so sure that there's this like group of people who live somewhere on the planet or in outer space who's like purposely trying to make things really negative for the globe, and they're this all power. I don't believe that. I really don't believe that. What I do believe, though, is that we are in a state of consciousness as a human race. We are at this baseline primitive level of consciousness where greed and the desire for power is still very prevalent, and it's been for hundreds and thousands of years, and which is really nothing in terms of the lifespan of the entire universe, which we can argue whether how old it is, but like think in terms of infinite. Think in terms of like God's time, where 80 years, 100 years, or 2,000 years, or 20,000 years really isn't anything. I mean, the Earth's precession is 24,000 years. It rotates on an axis, but it has a wobble to it. And so for that wobble to reach a full revolution is 24,000 years. And so look, you can look into some astronomy and look into astrotheology, and look, they're saying we're coming into a new age of consciousness because of the alignment of certain planets and how things are shifting and changing. And man, I am a 100% believer that we are entering, or maybe have already entered into, a new level of consciousness. And it's not going to happen overnight, but I do think that a majority of people are becoming aware of this knowledge, and eventually we will reach that higher state of consciousness. I think it's essential for us to, I actually think it's written. I think that it's supposed to happen. But man, I ranted, dude. I have all these notes and stuff, and maybe I'll skim through them on my next turn. But you're looking up some scriptures. What do you got?
Well, so one thing that I find fascinating as I listen to all this,
I feel like it's gonna be a 3-hour recording.
Yeah, no, we're gonna stop. Cops have been driving by like every 2 minutes.
What are those guys doing?
So, in the video I watched today, Joe Dispenza was asked about biased, and we sometimes we're so blind to it we can't avoid it, and we see what we're looking for, right? So like, if I told you that Honda Accords are like, Honda Civics and Honda Accords are the most driven cars in Ohio, you'll start to notice them.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
totally. Yep. Absolutely.
And so that you gotta be aware of that when you're going down a new beliefs and system, because the mind is so powerful, and the way I said this before, I gotta find a way to articulate it better. I gotta find the quote of who said it, but basically what our subconscious is like a database of, or our memories, a database of past experiences that we file and filing systems. And because the brain is so smart, it processes things in a very like systematic way, and it knows that it has it knows its limits to retain information. And so it does this thing, your mind, when it perceives new information, it does this thing where it will take something new that you're experiencing and try to associate it with something that you've already experienced, and then make it relatable to that, and then that's how you develop your perspective on it, whether it was good or bad, or how you felt about it or whatever, because it's based on how you felt about those other experiences that you have, that you called up in your database real quick. And it's done without you even knowing it. And so the reason, and I think it was in Thinking Fast and Slow, but the reason that it was brought up is because we are really good at not seeing what really happened. We make up a false reality all the time.
Yeah.
And it's because we associate and make a story. And so it was in the context. It was in the context of this. So the book I'm reading is Thinking Fast and Slow. It's a great read.
Who's the author? Do you remember?
Yeah, his name is Daniel something. Daniel Kahneman.
Kahneman.
Oh yeah, Kahneman. Kahneman. So he's a Nobel Prize winner. He's great. So the context of this was how when we are asked, this is going to make light of everything.
Yeah.
When we are asked a difficult question, we answer an easier one. And so what we answer, so if I say, hey, how many black cars are there on the road in percentage to red cars in Ohio? What your mind will automatically do, without you even knowing it, will say, well, how many black cars did I see today? And how many red? And then answer that question, and then come up with an answer for the bigger question. And it's not based on any fact at all. It's just based on feelings, stories, like a cohesive or a coherent story, and so that's that's why the book is called Thinking Fast and Slow, and trying to make sense.
Okay, that makes sense now.
Of why you perceive things the way you do. And so what's so fascinating to me, and the reason I said all that, if you're following with me, is because I have a biblical worldview. So I consciously hear and perceive things with the filter of the Bible.
Yeah, and you always want to align everything with, you take this format or this structure and you want to fit it into your paradigm, really.
Yeah. And what you believe at your core, your truest belief. And my truest belief is Christianity. And it's amazing to me that what all of these people are saying lines up with what Jesus said 2,000 years ago, and what the Bible said even longer than that. And it's astonishing. And these, everybody that I've listened to, for the most part, are spiritual, but they don't believe in a lot of them identify a life giver. So they talk about energy and a spirit, a control, like Bruce Lipton talks about how there's a controller of his body, and so I haven't heard anybody, talk about one religion. They usually dismiss all of them. Actually, they all do. I mean, the people that I'm listening, reading, and researching, for the most part, I won't say they all do, but for the most part, but they're spiritual. They believe in some type of outside energy source, and that's why, you know, we're about to talk. Well, actually, I don't think we should get into it because we've already been recording, but about the immutable laws, and one of them is, or at least on the thing I read, is oneness, divine oneness, and how we're all connected. And all of these people that I'm researching say the same thing, that we are all a source of energy, and we all have vibrations and frequencies, and the universe is connected in that way.
Yeah.
And so everything we do and think and say has an effect, cause and effect and stuff. And so anyway, while you were talking, I was listening with one ear, and my eyes were pulling up a couple scriptures that related to the things that you were saying and things that I've heard. But here, let's see here. Hold on. Okay, I wrote it down. Luke 11:33 says this. Wait, did I say? Yeah, Luke 11:33. No one, after lighting a lamp, puts it in a cellar or under a basket, but on a stand, so that those who enter may see the light. Your eye is the lamp of your body. When your eye is healthy, your whole body is full of light. But when it is bad, your body is full of darkness. Therefore, be careful lest the light in you be darkness. If then your whole body is full of light, having no part dark, it will be wholly bright as a lamp when its rays give you light. And that to me speaks volumes about, first of all, what we allow in our body. You know, like the eye, I think here is just a metaphor for our senses, you know, like because what we see, you know, and how we perceive things and understand things, we then put in our body and internalize, you know, and then it comes out with actions. And so be careful what you put in your body, because if your eye is bad, darkness, you know, and then think about that. The darkness that's in you, you become addicted to because it's familiar, and then you don't know any better.
That's crazy, man.
And so, and then also the fact that it's referenced as a light, like several of these, neuroscientists and biologists and scientists and whatever, they're talking about how we're energy and we're a light source and all of this stuff, and it's crazy the language. And then in Luke 12:4, it says this, I tell you, and this, so Joe Dispenza talks about how we are living, most of us are living in survival 70% of the time. And you've brought it up several times, you know, the line analogy. And the body cannot live in a stressful state without breaking down and getting sick. It cannot live in that stressful state for too long before it starts breaking down and getting sick. And we weren't meant to live in that stressful state of mind. And because we live in a state of stress 70% of the time, we have developed these habits and perspectives of forming the worst case scenario and then planning on it happening. And then when we get something that's not that, we think it's better. And so it's just a means of survival.
Yeah.
It's all crazy. I mean, that's just, man, it's just...
See, that makes so much sense, man. I mean,
it's kind of like, it's like somebody who, I use a superficial example, somebody who is exposed to poverty growing up and then is exposed to a little bit of less poverty. Then that less poverty compared to what they're used to is just so much greater. But somebody who is exposed to no poverty at all. As a matter of fact, they're exposed to affluence. They're living in what you call a bandwidth, I could say, that is way on a different level. But that's superficial. That's a superficial example. When you're talking in terms of consciousness and fear being exposed to those bands, then you're only up. Oh, man, dude, it makes so much sense, and this is exactly why it makes sense when I think to myself, man, we are living on a lower level frequency. We're living at a baseline primitive level of existence, because think about it, man.
Stress.
We're living in a stressed world.
And we're surviving. I mean, but so let me just read this real quick. I tell you, my friends, do not fear those who kill the body, and after that have nothing more they can do. I mean, how crazy is that? I mean, you were just talking about that.
Man.
But I will warn you of whom you shall fear. Fear him who, after he has killed, has the authority to cast into hell. Yes, I tell you, fear him. And then it says, like, are not 5 sparrows sold for 2 pennies, and not one of them is forgotten before God? Why, even the hairs of your head are numbered. Fear not, you have more value than many sparrows. And it just goes on to talk about, like, in Luke, in other chapters, it talks about how to be anxious for nothing.
Amen, dude.
And that God is a provider, to seek eternal things, to seek the kingdom of heaven, and all else will be added onto you. And he's like, how much life can you add by worrying? And the reason I'm bringing these quotes up is because that's what these people are saying. Like Joe
The New Age
Dispenza.
guys.
Yeah, Joe Dispenza is saying, like, dude, when you get into a state of meditation and complete bliss, you do not want. You are fulfilled. You have everything that you want and need right then and there. And then everything that we need to acquire that state of mind is within. We already have it.
Amen, man. Amen.
And then, dude, Jesus said, the power that raised me from the dead lives in you. And and Joe Dispenza is talking about this energy that can lift cars and lift trucks and do crazy things. And it's amazing how much it lines up. And here's the thing. We've said this multiple times, but anybody that's stumbling upon this for the first time, our mission is not to convert anybody to Christianity.
No, not at all.
I mean, that would be great, but I'll plant
it's
seeds.
hard for us not to talk about it. It's our core, man.
Yeah.
And look, if anybody who's listening has some other belief system, value system, then that's fine. We're not trying to say, hey, man, your myth is bad. Look, there's a scripture. It says, for those who have ears to hear, let them hear.
Mm-hmm.
That's all we're doing. It's like, dude, we're talking about this, and I think we mentioned it before. We've certainly mentioned this after these recordings, is that we do not get our fulfillment, our wholeness, our whatever you want to call it, through your listening. If anybody's listening, we're receiving right now. We get our reward is already happening, because we are strengthening our faith, our belief, by doing this.
Habits alone.
Exactly. Habits. And so, man, if we look at and we say, oh gosh, this thing only has 4 views, well, who cares, man? That's not. If we start to think that, then we're missing the mark. That's not the point. So Tom and I, many times after these recordings, we'll still go on and talk for a good while, and we're just sharpening each other's.
Iron sharpens iron.
Iron sharpens iron, man.
Iron sharpens brother.
So,
it's funny. Do you know your thought?
yeah, I it's the one where I was thinking it while you were saying that, the scripture where it says, the kingdom of heaven is at hand, makes so much sense to me, because when we start talking about when Jesus said things like, man, look, what's inside me is already inside you. And that's this thing, the kingdom of heaven is at hand. It's already here.
Yeah.
This is the kingdom of heaven. at least from what I can now conceptualize. And look, I wanted to quickly just mention this because I had the vision where things happen cyclically, right? Remember we talked about this, cars, rotation, like everything is so cyclical. Seasons, days, hours, times, even our patterns of thought. Look at the week. You ever notice how Mondays feel different than Fridays? And then Saturdays feel a certain way, and then Sundays feel a certain way. And it's just cyclical. It's almost as if we're living in a constant, perpetual cycle that just we can never seem to get away from it. Just the perpetual week after week after week. And the motions are consistently the same. Hey, here comes Monday.
That's
Rhythm.
one of his laws.
Huh?
The law of
Yeah,
rhythm.
the law of rhythm. And-
Seasons
And so when you think of it, like, look at our solar system. We have our sun, and then you have Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, and so on and so on, and everything's just rotating, and it's rotating, it's going around, and it's going around. And even you look at the galaxy as a whole, you look at the big Hubble telescope pictures of galaxy, and it's all forming a circle, and things are going round and round and round. And look at oscillation. When you look inside an atom, you see particles just moving in circular, or vibration. What's a vibration? It's really just a cycle. Energy, sound waves. It's cycles, cycles per second,
Yep.
hertz, and so it's crazy because check this out, man. If we operate on a cycle, our thoughts do too, and it's almost like our energy. So back to what you were talking about, how I could think how you said it, but when we have okay, so the whole fear thing, we're put down at a lower level because there's so much fear. 70% we spend in fear. So, and then you said, well, when we have those up times, it's really it can only go as far, and this is the law of not polarity, not the principle of polarity, not compensation. I think it's polarity. Which one? We got vibration, action, correspondence, not cognitive compensation.
Correspondence is what happens inside happens outside.
Yeah, that's right. As above, so below. Gestation, relativity. Where's the other one? I think it's polarity. Yeah, it's a law of polarity. So I think.
There has to be an opposite. So
Which is the one where that gives the example of the heat and cold.
yeah, polarity.
That's polarity.
Yeah,
Okay, so
hot,
how it's
cold,
like,
right here.
yeah, okay. So it's like rhythm. It's like you have a thermometer and you say, okay, well, here's cold, or here's cold and here's hot. Well, when on the thermometer does hot become cold and cold becomes hot? That's a fun thought to think about. But so anyway, like the pendulum, like the swing of a pendulum.
Mm-hmm.
So you get a pendulum and you hold it this far back and then you let it go. Well, let's do away with gravity. So you'll get the same return, right? It'll go back here. You pull it up here, you let it go. It'll go this far, but it always comes back. So that's rhythm. That's cyclical almost. You can do it in the circle pattern too. So if we're on a lower a level of consciousness where we're 70% fear, well, that's like pulling the pendulum back just this far. You let go, and then it can only go this far. So you can only experience this much non-fear, and then you go right back. So here's the thing. Pull the pendulum as far back as possible. I'm not saying, hey, if you live in 1,000% fear, you'll experience the total opposite, but kind of, but not really. What I'm trying to say is, we are,
Let fear go.
which think about it. What's the opposite of letting fear go? Where do you go? Where is the cycle? How far does the cycle take you? Where's your consciousness going to rise to?
Yeah.
So, man, that's the thing. When you let fear go, when you let anxiety, stress, attachments, value systems, when you let that go, the beauty thing to think about is, well, then what do you start to, what's the force that you are now going to eclipse? Like, what is it? Because we're on this cyclical level, this pendulum, this rhythm that is 70% fear. So we're bouncing back and forth between being in fear and then being a little bit of joy, then fear, then joy, and it's just like this. It seems to be like a very little form, like a very little thing of energy. It's just like barely going. It's just like a little bit. It doesn't have no power. There's no fire. It's just you live in a little bit of fear, a little bit of joy, a little bit of fear, a little bit of joy. But the rising of consciousness is going to take us to that different level of rhythm.
Yeah, because what holds you back is that you are the one that is, by belief, you are in these laws, you are the one that is setting yourself up
Yeah.
to be living in that survival. And so listen to this quote. We wait, hold on, right here.
I think my phone's getting picking up. Yeah, that was my phone picking up a message or something, email.
Okay. So the best way to predict the future is to create it.
Yeah, that's a good one. I remember hearing that. Who said that?
Joe,
Is that Dispenza quoting somebody?
you know what? That's Joe Dispenza. I mean, he did not quote anybody. He just said that. And here's where it comes from, is because it ties directly with everything you just said, and we should end here, is that we wake up and I mean, it's so deep, but I'll give you the cliff notes of it. We wake up and we project what is going to happen in our day based on our past experiences.
Yeah.
And so if we're living in survival, what we will do is we will predict the worst case outcome. And then if we don't get anything, if we get anything above that, we like look at it as a success. And the problem is that we get what we expect because of what we believe in these laws.
Yeah.
And so, and here's the thing, I am so guilty of this on a very conscious level because I'm a contractor. So there are certain things that I don't like to do within remodeling. And so if I have a job that I need to go to the next day and I'm kind of like regretting it or not happy about it, when I wake up, I already I will manifest how bad it's going to be.
And then that becomes reality.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I'm like, man, this job is going to suck.
And dude, that is how subconscious programming works, because when you get to your job and then you start working in that state of mind, it's already familiar to you.
And it's already failed. You've already failed. You haven't given it any room for it to be anything other than what you expect. And because of what I said earlier on how our mind will perceive things and then correspond it to a feeling or a experience, it doesn't matter how good it actually is. We will be like, oh yeah, this stinks. I could be somewhere else, or I wish I wasn't here.
Right.
So we don't even give it an opportunity to be great.
Yeah, exactly.
We've already set it up for failure,
Yeah.
and we will get what we expect.
Yeah.
And so, you know, like I've been experiencing that on the opposite now. So jobs that I don't enjoy as much, I'm like, man, I can't wait to do this. I can't wait to get there and tackle this and become good at it and enjoy it, and then get better results.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna try to we'll wrap up here in just a few minutes. Okay, so that is essentially how the subconscious programming works. I mean, there's a lot to it, but that is. I'm gonna try to find a quick quote. I may not be able to find it fast, so just bear with me. And I don't even have the fountain. Let me just give me 1 second while I try to.
Well, here, I'll talk.
We must. Oh man. Yeah. Okay. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to try to recap what we've been talking about.
Well, I think we should at least take a few more minutes and talk about the subconscious programming steps, because we were supposed to talk about that, but we talked a lot about.
Well, we already hit the steps last week. So, I mean, if you think about it, like, besides finding that quote and continuing your train of thought, why should anybody, what is the benefit anybody's going to get from listening to this episode in particular? Like, what have we given them other than information that
You asking me?
yeah, without the use? Like, what like, for example, one very practical thing is the best way to predict your future is to create it.
Well, look, that's a great question you just asked, because here's the thing. Just like with us doing this platform with and not putting our value on the amount of listeners or if anybody's listening, what's happening is that we are vibrating on we right now are vibrating on that frequency. So you may not even consciously know it, for the listeners, is that just by merely listening to this and receiving it, well, that is changing the vibratory state.
Yeah.
So that's the help. If you're in a position right now in your life where you are wanting to receive this information, I mean, you could have just by happenstance clicked on this and totally rejected it. It might have already, in the first 30 seconds, changed to another channel or whatever. But the thing is, the ones who are still listening are the ones who are open to receiving, and that's the change. That's the beginning steps, or maybe there's somebody who just reaffirming something that they believed for a very long time, and that's the good thing. So the value is already happening pretty much on a subconscious level just by listening. But there's a few things. So there's a real quick by Thoreau. He wrote in the Book of Walden, said, "The fault finder will find faults even in paradise." That's a good one, because we know all about negative people who, gosh, doesn't matter what they're doing, if there's a good thing happening, if they're hanging out with friends, they'll still be the negative one, because that's their proclivity. That's their subconscious programming, man. It doesn't matter what's going on. They will always see everything as a negative, because that's their comfort zone.
Yep.
That's what's familiar to them.
That's what they're addicted to.
That's what they're addicted to. And go ahead. I'm gonna spend 20 more seconds trying to find this, but go ahead.
Well, we've been talking about the whole point of these last recordings has been to change what you believe at a core level. And from the videos that I listened to today, the information that I got, there was this scientific evidence that in order to make a new memory, the emotion has to be higher than other previous memories.
To make a new memory?
Yeah, to like replace an old existing habit or subconscious program. So for example, if because of our dopamine and reward behavior in our brain, if we get something good, and we look forward to it, then we're excited to encounter it again, and that requires a certain an emotional level.
Yeah.
That's attached to what we perceive.
Yeah.
And it, like the example that Joe gave was, if you're newly married or whatever, you married a long time and you get off work and you're excited to go home because you're going to see your wife or you're going to see your husband, and therefore that thought is triggered by an emotion in your subconscious that you're thinking about, and you recall it. And so now take the opposite effect, that you have a negative thing like going to work because of that. So in order to change that habit and that subconscious training and programming, you have to have a new thought, and the emotion has to match it higher
Yeah.
than the old one. You know, and I don't know how, you know, they measure that, etc. But the thing that I want to bring up is something that was said by Joe, and it was so cool. He said, "A memory without the emotional charge is called wisdom."
Oh,
I mean, dude,
man.
that blew my
man, that is really good.
my mind, because you think about wisdom,
Man, yeah. That's
and
good.
wisdom is information from somebody that has had that experience and knows better.
Yeah, yeah,
And how often do we accept it?
yeah.
I mean, in my life, very few times. You know, if I remember very specifically. Listen to this story. Can I tell a story?
Yeah.
I remember I was out in California and I was pursuing a girl that was no good for me. I don't want to go into too many details, but she was unavailable, you know, like set to be married and whatnot. And I was pursuing her, and I felt like there was a mutual pursuit. And I remember calling Ron, and, you know, I wasn't a believer and had no, you know, strong morals. And I was like, hey, you know, I don't know how we got in the conversation. I was like, yeah, I'm interested in this girl, but, you know, she's engaged. And he was just like, man, you do not want to go down that path. He gave me some real strong wisdom. And essentially what he said through a very, you know, long and detailed conversation was that you will regret it and you will reap what you sow. And man, I'll tell you what, the reward was not worth the immediate reward was not worth
Temporary satisfaction.
Yeah, the temporary satisfaction was not worth the long time repercussions of it.
Amen.
And that is exactly how wisdom is. Because, I mean, you think about that experience and that story, my emotions were so high on the pursuit and getting her. And the wisdom is to not have that emotional charge and still have.
Isn't that crazy? Isn't that
So scary though, because so much of what we do is because of our emotional state.
Yep.
And,
So-
and not only for like negative things, but like for things that make us feel good. Like this is why pleasure seeking is so man, there's a lot of things you can do that give you pleasure. And we're just not even the extreme things, like, man, you can just go like have all the sex you want. You could get all the entertainment you want. Watch the TVs, play the video games, drugs, even gambling, even things of cognitive ease. That's a pleasure when you don't have to think hard about something. You can just kind of relax the brain and be in a kind of a fog state, which, man, it's like that kind of kicks your butt. To go along with the 70% time we live in fear, this is something that somebody said. I don't remember who, but he said, we would rather master disappointment than have fulfillment. Now, whatever he means by fulfillment, I mean, I get it, but that could mean a few different things. But think about it. We would rather master disappointment than have fulfillment, because of us having the proclivity to feel good at that fear-based level, at that disappointment level, lower rate of vibration. Look, that is familiarity. That is a subconscious programming that is deep inside you, and so it's so much easier to master disappointment. Like, man, I know people like that, where they actually feel good in states of depression and lower rates of vibration, baseline primitive levels of consciousness, because, man, it's easy. And especially when you do it more and more and more, it becomes a comfort thing, which is so dangerous. So man, that's all I want to say. Look, I'm gonna skim through these real quick because I know that we wanted to talk a little bit about subconscious programming, but look man, it's not hard. We've been talking about familiarity, what it all means, why we do it, why it feels good. And look, subconscious programming, check it out. John Assaraf, this is what he did. His mentor told him, hey, write down in a book, think about the most crazy aspirations, things that you aspire to be and do. Think about it, just like in your wildest dreams, envision yourself, and then write those things down as if they already are. Like, I am very successful, I live in this, I do this, da da da. And as you're writing them, you have to omit the emotions that they are actually real. You can't. And I remember John Assaraf said that while he was writing these down, he was like, dude, yeah, right, this is like, I don't even know how to do this. But then eventually, when you start to learn how to block out negative and feelings of doubt and unbelief, and you just write things down, believing them, and emitting that emotion, then your subconscious mind starts to believe it, and it becomes real. Because remember, your subconscious mind doesn't know the difference between what's real and not. And so then you can, once it's time for you to start, or you might even plan it for yourself, or here's where it's interesting, is that when you actually act by chance, by quote unquote chance, when an opportunity comes to you, you act on it, but it's your subconscious actually receiving it. So you'll respond to it in the positive, or you'll accept it. I mean, look at the movie The Secret. That's all that is, man. All it is this. Use your imagination, what you want and this is kind of superficial, but let's just say you want whatever worldly things you want. Write it down as if it's already real. Read it, believe it, have the feeling of that it's already real, and then the more and more you do it, the more that feeling will become familiar to you. Then you'll start taking action towards those things. It's really that basic.
Manifest.
Yeah, that's how it'll manifest. It's not like you read it and then you sit in your house one day and something will come and knock on your door and say, hey, here it is. It's just you'll start taking actions towards those paths. It's that simple. I think that's pretty basic levels of consciousness, conscientiousness and consciousness. It's very simple once you finally figure it out. How are attachments value? Oh, and yeah, attachments and value. Let's see. Imagine programming. How do we start from? I mean, I got a lot of stuff down, but we just don't have time.
Yeah,
we can revisit this again on the next reading. But we talked about subconscious programming.
Yeah.
Those are the steps. The simplest thing is just to write them down with belief, with undoubt, and you will know. Write down the most extravagant things that you want for yourself. Write it down in sentence form, as if you already possess them. So, like today I drove my car to the store. Well, today I made $1 million by selling this and that and that. And then read it as if it's just true. And you have to master feeling.
Yep.
But what were you saying?
So
I'll get this next time.
let's end with this quote.
Okay.
That speaks directly to what you just said. Thought attracts that upon which it is directed.
Thought attracts that upon which it is directed.
Yep. So what you think and what you focus your thought on will attract what it is directed towards. And so if you're thinking about those things that you're writing down,
Yeah.
it will attract those.
Yeah.
It's not coincidence. It's not chance.
No,
It's
no.
not random.
Yeah.
And here's what's so crazy. And this is it, man. We got to end with this story.
Well, I got one more after that, and a couple quotes.
Yeah, Job in the Bible said, "The thing I have feared most, has come upon me." And
that's
here's
no coincidence.
Here's just a personal testimony. I have had I've only had a handful of serious relationships in my life. Okay? And I am the most loyal person. I mean, I am loyal to a fault. And I think because of that, my biggest fear is unloyalty.
So
And-
so
I've been in a handful of relationships, serious relationships, and the majority of those relationships have ended because my significant other has cheated on me. And it,
and that's the thing you feared the most.
yes, yep. And so, you know,
Funny.
it's what we attract, man. What we
What you
fear.
focus on,
Yeah.
your energy, what your energy
Yep.
focuses on, it's gonna manifest.
Yep.
And so, look, if you're in a constant state of fear, you might, man. So it makes sense if you
Yeah.
if you're in a constant state of fear, and so you say, well, I'm gonna do whatever I can to not to make sure that whatever I fear doesn't come. Well, your energy's focused on it.
Yep.
So what's going to happen? The universe is saying, look, man, I'm giving you what you are sending out.
Yep.
And so that right there is the law of attraction.
Yep.
That is one of the principles. The law of attraction. Isn't that one of the principles?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
And-
law of attraction.
Yep.
So that's it. And think about it. There are many laws. That is just one. So I go back to that quote. I forget who said it. Do not become too preoccupied with truths that are merely correct. And that's the thing. Law of attraction is a law. That's it. It's one thing. You cannot focus your entire life around this one law, because there's a lot else that you need to be focusing on. That is just one law that you need to master. Get good at. Anything negative comes in, you got to learn how to block it out. And that's something that you don't know how to acknowledge, or you don't know the feeling until you start doing it. And usually it's like, look, man, everything that keeps coming in your life, you're attracting it.
Yep.
Everything. And look, you might say, well, what about this weird anomalous situation? Anomalous situations don't count because they're anomalous. They're not going to repeat on a daily basis. And if they are repeating, well, guess what? You're attracting it.
Yep.
So it's not anomalous. Amen, man. There's a lot of stuff that I want to talk about, but I think we covered some good stuff. I mean, what are we on? We're going on almost an hour and a half. So, hey, man,
We'll just keep it going.
we'll keep it going. Thanks for listening to the platform. We got more coming out. If there's any mistakes that we've made, we'll
Forgive us.
forgive us.
And next time we're going to be talking. We're going to probably dive into these laws, these universal laws that govern
Yeah.
the universe.
Yeah.
Okay, well, awesome, man. Good
ya.
night. See ya.